You've connected to Cisco Unplugged.
Hello and welcome to episode 90 here of Cisco Unplugged. I'm Dan Klamert, your host. I'm back here with Al Dumdei. How are you doing, Al?
Hey, good. Doing well. It's that we're having that time of year now with the lots of soccer on TV. Sorry, football on TV, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I heard though that the Americans lost to the Belgians, right?
Yes.
You knew that, but
I
that
saw
game has
that.
been overturned, is what I've heard, because the Belgians were caught illegally importing stroopwafels. So yeah, I'm starting
I
that
didn't hear
rumor.
that. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I was gonna say we got I don't know if we just got beat. We got beat down by them. It was
Yeah, let's not
pretty
talk about that
handily.
game. We
Yeah.
definitely don't want to analyze that one.
No.
You don't want to get me started there.
Oh, yeah, it was a little bit
Uh,
of an embarrassment there, but
yeah, it's been
it's
fun with the World
still
Cup, though.
fun
I will
nonetheless.
say. Yeah, it's been a lot
So
of fun.
yeah, we're entering the dog days of summer here, but it's I want
For
to welcome
sure.
back our guests here to the show. We've got Travis and Justin. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing well, doing well. Could you guys remind our viewers your roles here at Cisco?
Yeah, my name's Travis Schlafke, and I'm one of the product managers on the Cisco wireless team.
Nice.
And my name is Justin Liu. I'm a technical marketing engineer on the Cisco wireless team.
Great. Thanks, guys. Yeah, today we're going to be discussing what's new and what's coming here on the Cisco Campus Gateway. We've touched on this a little bit previously on multiple episodes, but we've got some exciting updates here for you today on that product. So we want to discuss that. But before we get into it, just wanted to do the reminders here. We do take questions via Slido. You can join the Slido jumping on that QR code on the screen or the link below the video on the YouTube page. We are streaming on YouTube as usual, and you can always go back and watch these at your leisure as well at youtube.com/@getunplugged. If you go out there, click the subscribe button, hit the little bell for notifications next to it, you'll be notified when we do go live with more great content like this. So please jump in with any questions you have. We'll be sure to interject those as we can here during the episode if we get some questions like we usually do. And so with that, I also want to remind people that we do publish our schedule and it's out there. It's the first link below the first link on the page, on the YouTube page. You'll see the link there of upcoming schedule of episodes. You can go there and see what's on the docket coming on the horizon there for our future episodes. But like I said, if you do subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll be notified anyways. So let's get unplugged here. Let's talk about what's new with the Campus Gateway here. Now, I guess remind our viewers here, Travis, what the Campus Gateway is. I think that's where we're going to start.
Yeah. I think that's a good starting point. I know we've talked about it on here in the past, but
Yeah.
but it's been a minute. So
Yes.
for users who maybe haven't worked with this product before or haven't deployed it, Campus Gateway is a cloud product for Meraki dashboard that allows you to bring seamless fast layer 3 roaming to dashboard. So all the benefits of a centralized wireless architecture in dashboard in a cloud native product. So if you look, yep, and my slides are up here. My visual aids, we won't call them slides today. We'll use visual aids because that's
Yes.
more fun. But the architecture we launch with is what you see today on my left hand side. APs, campus gateways, they all live in the same Meraki dashboard. It gives all that benefit of the roaming, building out that fast roaming domain, and scalable, right? We could do 5,000 APs on this thing at once, which was a huge scale up for dashboard networks. But you were limited within that network, right? That was kind of one of the rubs with the initial launch of this, right? And we always knew that was something we would have to evolve beyond, and that's where we're going with this in this next release coming July 31st, which for those of you who don't know, same day Spider-Man comes out. I think we're going to have the bigger launch, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so we're really evolving this architecture and we're moving beyond that network boundary where we can now have multi-network roaming. We can have L2, L3 roaming across that network, that dashboard network boundary, which has never been the case before in dashboard. So one exciting thing. And with that, since you can see I have a ton more campus gateways in my network as well, we're scaling up the number of clusters, the number of APs, the number of clients, and all those things. And that brings, just kind of building out that architecture you're seeing on the right, that brings a ton of other use cases that are, I think, going to excite customers and things we've been asked to kind of make sure we bring in this next revision. So why don't I jump in and talk about some of these use cases for our viewers? So I'm going to start at the top and kind of work my way down, which I guess feels like a logical way to do this. If you can imagine, if we're talking about roaming beyond a network, dashboard network, now I got to build SSIDs in each one of those. And there's chances for error and config drift and all those things. So when we knew we wanted to do this, we needed to figure out a way to do configuration at scale across this and ensure that all your roaming happens seamlessly and that all your settings and all these things, matched across these networks. That's very critical. You can't have one SSID WPA2 and one WPA3 and expect that to work as you go across these boundaries, along with a bunch of other things. So we're introducing an org level SSID profile, where you can build this SSID now at the org and deploy it down to every one of your networks that are in this deployment. And then that will allow you to tunnel back to the campus gateway and keep those configurations consistent, and also reduce the amount of things you have to touch in terms of managing SSID configuration. You'll probably have noticed in that last slide that I have something called network groups that wrapped around all those networks. So we're bringing this 3-tier hierarchy to Dash, where you can now have the org, and you have the network, and in the middle of it, we're just calling it network groups because you're effectively grouping a bunch of networks. So that brings some of those concepts that you have in Catalyst Center over to the dashboard as well. So now you have a little bit more of a match between those management solutions. And that really helps us. That's another piece of this puzzle to expand that roaming domain across these networks, right? All these things kind of tie together. They're all components of it that stitch this together really nicely for the user. I mentioned we're expanding. Yeah.
If our viewers are wondering about how we configure some of this, I think we're going to talk a little bit about this later, right? I think Justin.
Absolutely. We'll bring Justin on here after I talk about this, and he'll show everything in the dashboard.
Okay, cool.
Bring this up and manage this.
Since we've sort of come to maybe a brief stopping point, I'll just sort of, from my perspective, we've had the gateway now for probably 2 years, something like that, right? Since it was
only a year out. I know.
It feels much longer. We launched it last May. I'm thinking some of the beta testing and stuff like that.
Yeah, with the beta testing.
Yeah, but I think this is where the campus gateway really comes into play now, right? I mean, up until this point, there were things that the campus gateway couldn't do that we could only do with controllers, and you kind of had to go down the controller architecture.
Totally.
This change in architecture changes what we can do. It changes our ability to scale. It changes the flexibility of this, right? So for example, like you were saying earlier, we can tie multiple networks together. Well, that also means these other networks can have different configurations, right? And I could actually give somebody, let's take a college campus, for example. A lot of times they'll have R&D facilities. I could actually give that R&D its own network and say, you create whatever SSIDs you want local, but then we're going to tunnel this one back, right? And so you have control over your part of the network. You're not going to be able to affect any of the rest of it, but you can affect that local part of your network. But then I can still have seamless roaming across my entire campus, right? So to me, this is really the game changer for where the campus gateway becomes prevalent for these larger architectures that we want to scale large roaming domains across. So
absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly where I wanted to go with all these use cases. You got it, because without all these different elements, we couldn't kind of match some of those more demanding. I won't even call them demanding. They're just more complicated environments, right? And we knew we weren't going to hit all those initially, but we're there now. We got all this stuff. This is the unlock, I think, going forward for Campus Gateway.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll kind of touch on a few more of these points here, but the expanded scale, I think this is really important for those large customers, right? 5,000 APs is a lot, but we have customers who have 10, 12, 20,000 APs in their network, and we needed to be able to scale up to those. So we're bringing multiple clusters in a single network. That's 12K APs per cluster with the H1. So still not up to 20K, but there's deployment scenarios where you can kind of horizontally scale this and bring up multiple campus gateway networks. That allows us to build out to these larger networks. Think of it kind of like maybe akin to like a mobility domain or something like that in the WLC world. Guest tunneling, multiple clusters means you can dedicate clusters for different activities. Like you were saying, now I can tunnel my internal SSID to something that's on campus. I can tunnel my guests, my untrusted traffic out to a DMZ. There's no requirement for any of these things to these clusters to live next to each other. So you can drop them in these different locations, different data centers, different MDFs. Which is also cool because then when you think about, and I'm going to skip down to disaster recovery on that, is if I'm locating these in different buildings, I can now have another level of redundancy where I can have clusters fail over amongst each other across different buildings. So if I do lose one data center, I can just flip all my traffic over to that other one and everything stays up and running and you don't have a network down scenario because your entire cluster failed. And the last sort of element to this is we're bringing remote site support for all those branch locations. Imagine if you were deploying MXs before and using those for wireless concentration and dashboard. Campus Gateway can now move into that domain at a much higher scale. Like I said, 12,000 APs. We can hit all these remote sites, and we're bringing data encryption for that tunnel. So as this stuff goes over untrusted links on the internet, we can ensure all that data is safe and secure from the AP to the Campus Gateway. I'll pause there, see if there's any questions coming in from the crowd, or
Nothing.
Dan, you had any comments you wanted to add?
Nothing directly from the crowd. Just some comments about the gateways facilitating some new capabilities and that sort of stuff. But no
about
questions.
Al's Wi-Fi moose too, but
yeah.
I did have a question there on the network groups that we're going to talk a little bit more here about, kind of this additional capability that we've brought in here to the dashboard. Is there a reach or like outside of just the campus gateway with this capability, or is this exclusively kind of introduced for the campus gateway and for scale? I don't know if that question.
Yeah, really good question. Some of these elements will be specific to like Campus Gateway, obviously, cluster failover and tunneling, all sorts of things, and the scale, right? Those are very, tied directly to Campus Gateway. But when we talk about like SSID profiles and building network groups, those more logical and management aspects, we're going to launch them initially with Campus Gateway networks with the long-term plan of, hey, someone like a retailer with lots of sites may benefit from just having a profile. Maybe they don't, maybe templates doesn't quite work for them and all they need to do is build their SSID profile. There's no reason this wouldn't scale out to some of it like a regular distributed deployment. So expect to see these kind of trickle down to some of these other, maybe not trickle down, but expand out to everybody's organizations over time. But yeah, today these are tied very tightly to Campus Gateway upon launch.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. That makes sense.
And I think we'll get to see this when Justin kind of does the demo, but on it, you can create that profile across multiple networks, and then on each network decide how you want to treat it, right? So but I think it'll become real obvious when we get into the demo too. So, and I think that just again adds to that degree of flexibility. So I think this is really a nice design. So
yeah. Cool. I probably have one more thing we can talk about here.
My favorite topic.
A little bit more on the scale, right? Because people are probably asking, okay, well, cool. How big can I make this thing, right? So there's two sort of concepts here, right? That are important. And Justin, if I don't land any of these right, jump in and correct me because you're the technical wizard on all this stuff. So we have the network group that wraps around this, right? But what's really important is you have this what we kind of just call your Campus Gateway network. There's nothing special about it. It's just a Meraki dashboard. It's just kind of a nomenclature thing. If this is where you're going to put your Campus Gateways. But from like a dashboard setup, it would be no different than where you put your APs. But we call it, for the sake of the diagram, Campus Gateway Network. You'd put all of your campus gateways in here, and that would constitute a roaming domain. So any of these networks that tunnel back to this set would be that roaming domain. And that's where we get some of these scale numbers, right? I can put 12,000 APs and 64,000 clients in this roaming domain, whether there is 4 of them or 1 of them, right? And actually, I think my slide needs to be updated here. So these numbers actually are equal. Sorry, I have an old slide, but focus on this roaming domain because that's the same for the cluster level, right? So I could build 2 clusters here and get the same capacity, or I could build all 4. And that's important to note because every AP is building a tunnel to every cluster in there, right? So we're building this full mesh architecture, right? So that way, when we talk about things like DR failover, say these 2 are the primary serving ones, and these are maybe just backup, and they're just backing up each one of these. We have the capacity to completely fail over and not overwhelm any one of these clusters, right? So if I got 12,000 APs distributed across these two both fail, these guys can still pick up that load and you don't lose any clients, you don't lose any AP connections, right? So on an H1, we can do 12,000. On the 9800L, which just started shipping at the end of the May, we can do 1,000 and 10,000 clients on there. Let me pause there. Justin, anything you wanna contribite, or Al or Dan, you have any questions on that?
Question.
One thing I want to add real quick, sorry, Al, is that in the Campus Gateway networks, you can have up to 4 different clusters, and all those cluster members, so all 8 of those campus gateways, we'll make sure to distribute all the client pairwise master keys or PMKs. So that way, no matter which campus gateway and APs you roam to, as long as the SSID is the same, you'll be able to do a fast and seamless roam. So that's kind of the benefit here of that network group, is that no matter where you are in the network, as long as the AP and campus gateway have same SSID, campus gateways are in the same campus gateway network, you'll be able to have that good experience for your wireless clients.
So 2 things I want to drill down in just a little bit. Number 1, you're showing everything is an SSO pair, but you've also said the tunnels are always connected. What's the kind of the give and take if I decide to use an SSO pair or I don't decide, I just decide to use an individual gateway there? What am I looking at if I go with an individual versus using SSO from a failover standpoint?
You want to tackle that, Justin? Go for it.
Sure. So it really comes down to like the amount of downtime that you really want for your network. So if you have like the SSO pairs, essentially, that's going to be an active. So while each campus gateway within a cluster are serving APs and clients, if one of them goes down, we do have a fast keep alive sent between cluster members, so that if one campus gateway in a cluster fails, we'll fail over all those APs automatically, and that will take about 1 second to happen. So you'll have no downtime. Otherwise, you can get away with just doing a standalone only cluster, so a cluster of 1, and you could have like say multiple clusters of 1. And I'm not sure if I'm going to steal Travis's thunder in his slides, but we have that feature called disaster recovery. That's going to be similar to what we have with like an N+1 on controller. So if all the cluster members fail, we can set a disaster recovery cluster so that the APs would automatically fail over to that cluster. In that case, the downtime will be a little bit longer, not too long. It's only going to be 9 to 11 seconds for all the APs to fail over. But that's just something to keep in mind. So if you do want to have that 0 downtime, you would go with a cluster of 2. Otherwise, if that 9 to 11 seconds is okay, you can go with clusters of 1.
I think this is important because when we think of N+1 with controller architectures, we don't have the dual connections built, right? And so what happens is you basically disconnect from one, the SSID goes down, and then you reconnect to another one. And that can take minutes, right, for that to happen. Not seconds, but minutes. In this case, the connection is basically instantaneous, and the SSID doesn't go down, correct? So the SSID stays up the entire time, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So essentially what happens is the client state machine is still on the AP itself. And all we're doing is rebuilding our VXLAN tunnel to the new campus gateway. So since the client state machine stays up, the SSID is staying up, the clients don't even disconnect from the network during that whole failover process. So they might lose 9 to 11 pings, but for all intents and purposes, they won't be like, okay, it goes from Wi-Fi to 5G back to Wi-Fi, essentially.
Yeah. So if I'm saying, hey, if I have a fairly catastrophic outage, I've lost an entire gateway. Can I stand 10 seconds of outage for that? If I'm okay with that, then I wouldn't necessarily need to use an SSO pair, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay. And I'm not, a lot of times it's an economics decision, and in it, an extra gateway in the overall picture is probably not a big deal, but it just as you're looking at this architecturally, it's good to kind of understand what those differences are, why you'd pick one versus the other. So
yeah. And I think that's the cool
then
part.
my second question.
There's flexibility.
Yes, exactly. Good way to put it. And then the second question is, okay, so help me reconcile this a little bit. So we're going to go one level deeper in this. One of these gateways, or one pair, however we look at it, is capable of doing 12,000 access points, 64,000 clients.
Yep.
You put 4 of those into a network, right, or a network group, but I still only have 12,000 access points and 64,000 clients. Help me reconcile that math. To me, when I put 4 in, I'm thinking, okay, I should get 4 times the capacity, maybe twice the capacity if I have N+1 or something like that. Help me sort of understand why I would want to put 4 in and get the same capacity out.
Yeah, so maybe if I jump to something like this can kind of help show some of that, right? So there's a couple different ways you can design this, right? I kind of alluded to this. You could have 2 of these be your corporate clusters, 2 of these be your guest clusters, right?
Okay.
So on this same AP network, I could have the one SSID go here and the one SSID go here. We're still kind of maxed out at the number of clients, because if any one of these fails over, or sorry, the APs, we still have to have that capacity, right? So I could still distribute this as like, say, 6,000 and 6,000 or something like these. These get load balanced that in such a way that the APs are still below. But if I were to load these up 12,000 here, 12,000 here, 12,000 here, if one of these fails over, I don't have capacity to serve that other 12,000 on a standalone cluster, right? So that's the overhead when we talk about the APs. And then the clients, in theory, the clients, if I go back to, I think there's a statement here, right? APs can be, but for client scale, worst case, it's kind of the same situation. Even if I evenly distributed all these and I did 64,000 clients, 64,000, and so on and so forth. Again, if you start losing any of these members, we don't have the capacity on that box to take all those clients from another cluster. So it's really kind of like, hey, we're giving the numbers for a worst case scenario of, yes, you could put all 4 of these in here, but if I lose 3 of those 4, I still need that single cluster to be able to service everything that those other clusters were servicing if I had them equally distributed.
So effectively, if I go with these numbers, the 12,064, I could, not that you'd want to, but if you lost 4 of the members of that network, you'd still survive.
Exactly.
Sorry, 3 of the members.
You could still survive. You could still service these numbers on that single cluster, right? In the event of a really colossal failover or failure.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
From a roaming standpoint, they're all tied to the same VLAN structure, right? So each of these gateways would tie back. Let's say they all have VLAN 10, VLAN 20, just as an example, that are attached to these groups. So as I roam, there's no what we used to refer to as layer 3 roaming, where we're tunneling you back to the original controller or anything like that, right?
Ooh, Justin, do you want to talk about L2 and L3 roams? That's a good topic.
Yeah, sure. So we support both layer 2 and layer 3 roams. So it really depends on the VLAN availability for your clusters. So if all the clusters have the same VLAN availability, say VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, what happens is if I roam to an AP that is tunneling to the leftmost campus gateway, and then I go to an AP that tunnels to the second leftmost campus gateway. If both of those clusters have, let's say, VLAN 10 available, I'll do a layer 2 roam. So my client goes to those APs. It'll be terminated by that new campus gateway cluster because that's the cluster that the AP is set as its primary cluster. Now, in the case of a layer 3 roam, this is going to be where each cluster has different VLAN availabilities. So the leftmost is VLAN 10, then the one to the right of it's VLAN 20, then VLAN 30, then VLAN 40. What happens in this case is even though you may roam to an AP that has a different primary campus gateway, your point of presence in the network's not going to change. So what that means is the AP will say, okay, this client needs to be put on VLAN 10, but my primary campus gateway only has VLAN 20 available. So what I'll do is rather than send it to the campus gateway and then anchor it back, what we're going to do is we're going to make a direct tunnel from the roamed to AP to the original connected campus gateway. So in this case, the leftmost campus gateway cluster to maintain that VLAN 10 assignment. So we aren't going to be doing that traditional mobility tunnel between the different campus gateways. It'll be directly from the AP to the correct campus gateway for that client.
Okay, so let's say each one of these groups has one one VLAN. So VLAN 10, 20, 30, and 40. And I moved to that second set of APs from the first set. So I'm on VLAN 10. It's going to tunnel me back to VLAN 10. Now, let's say Dan joins on that second set. He is on same SSID, but he's on VLAN 20 at that point. Is that the way that would work?
Correct.
And I'm on VLAN 10 because I roam from the first cluster, the first group. Okay, or AP network, I guess is what it's labeled as. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so whatever your original connected VLAN assignment is, as long for that, for that session that you have, you'll maintain that throughout whatever AP network you're roaming to, just as long as that campus gateway has connectivity to those APs.
What happens so let's say I roam to that second set. I'm still on VLAN 10 on the very first cluster. What happens if I lose that first cluster now? So because my SSID doesn't go down, right? I'll just switch over back to VLAN 20 then on the second cluster, or 30 or 40, whichever one I get switched to. And then the client will have to sort out kind of if he gets a new IP address. Is that?
Yeah, so unless you have another cluster set for disaster recovery. So if you have that first set of campus gateway clusters that you're connecting to has a disaster recovery cluster set, and a disaster recovery cluster is that backup cluster. And one of the main requirements for this is that it has the same VLAN availability as the primary cluster. And if that's the case, then that AP will then start tunneling the traffic to that DR cluster because it has that VLAN 10. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, yes, you would have to, the client would kind of have to get a new IP address on the new VLAN for that primary campus gateway because VLAN 10 is no longer available. It won't be served.
I mean, I think most of these, if you're scaling it out like that, you're probably going to have the same VLANs across the clusters. But just in the event that you didn't, that would be a design decision, I guess, as you're looking at sort of how to architect that. So, okay. Dan, was there a question you started?
Yeah, there is a question about radius, and it's around, does the radius traffic flow via the campus gateway? And if so, will it support RADSEC? And hopefully soon the new upcoming TLS, PSK, I've forgotten if it did.
The traffic does still flow through campus gateway. That remains the same. We do not have RADSEC support. That is coming. That should be available soon, probably later this year for beta. So it's something we're working to get out there. But when we launch this on June 31st, it won't be there yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So I don't, this isn't necessarily a technical question, but if I'm a customer and I've got, maybe I've gone down the road of on-prem or historically have been an on-prem customer, and I'm looking to move to the cloud, what is my path? If I bought one of the recent controllers, do I have an option to convert or move that way to the
Yeah,
cloud?
you do. You do actually. This was something we launched at Cisco Live this year, where if you have an H1 or an L, because that's what we have for campus gateways today,
Yep.
there is a documentation. There's a document on documentation.meraki.com that walks you through the pre-steps to do, and then what you'll do after that. You can open a support case with Meraki support or TAC. TAC will just route it to Meraki support, but they will then guide you through the conversion process to get that H1 or that L into campus gateway mode. Now, caveat is it's a one-way conversion today. This is kind of our first pass at it. We're working to expand this and make this more orchestrated through dashboard. So once you do that, just know the only way to get your WLC back is through the RMA process today. So
Okay.
it's really intended for those early adopters, those customers who already have campus gateways, already know what it is. It's like, hey, cool, I'm set, and now I have these spare WLCs. Let me get them into campus gateway, and now I can start building out additional clusters. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't see this as like, it's not a willy-nilly thing anyway, right? I mean,
Right, exactly.
I mean, if you got, controllers, newer controllers, you don't know what APs they have. Maybe you can't, there's all sorts of conditions with this that you really have to think through.
Totally.
It's a great option, but it's definitely, it's nice to have that, but it's definitely something that is a part of a much larger strategy if you're going to do that.
Yeah, and it keeps your investment protected in buying that
Yeah.
platform, or you don't have to buy another one. Maybe you've bought and you've tested with an L or something. You're set to go. Now I can convert some of my H1s. Maybe I have APs that are already, there is a decision matrix there to make that decision. But we will support the customer to say, cool, you can bring that box down to campus.
Yeah, I think that's great from an investment protection
Yep.
perspective. That's huge. We do have a question that came in here while we were talking on that, on the last subject here. One of the things I've always wanted is identity-based tunnels, i.e., instead of radius assigned VLANs, I want my identity to take me to a different VXLAN termination point in my network. Is that something that is possible or a roadmap item? Back in the WLC days, this was not possible.
It's not possible today. It's something we're evaluating. Makes sense, right? Of like, okay, anchor, and that idea right there also kind of helps with some of the scale and predictably landing clients on different clusters, right? So then you can say, okay, I know these clients are always there. From a security and from a scale perspective, it's something we're interested in doing and having conversations around. No commitment as to when we might be able to support that, but it's certainly something we're looking into.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question too.
So we want to do a quick demo.
Yeah.
Sure. Let me share my screen now.
Okay.
Now the mandatory question, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So here we are in Meraki dashboard. So this is going to be one of the new pages that we introduced with network groups. So this is going to be the network hierarchy page. This will be located in organization, configure network hierarchy, and this will be where we can create the new network group. So I already have a network group created, but I'll just show you how to create one real quick. So in here, we'll go create network group. It's a very one-step process. You can just set the name. So let's say network group demo, right? You can hit create. We already created the network group. So now we have to add networks to this network group, because in order to roam across APs of different networks, there are two things you have to satisfy. The first one is the AP networks and the campus gateway networks have to be added to a network group. And then we'll have to use a new configuration profile called SSID profiles to provision the SSID. I'll show that in a bit. So to add networks to a network group, all you have to do is just select the network. So I'm going to select one of my networks, building 13, and then I'm going to hit group network. And here we can select an existing network group, or you can create a new one. I'm going to select an existing network group with the rest of my other campus gateways, because this is an AP only network, and we're going to add this to a network group that contains other APs as well as campus gateways. Click save. Now we have step one done. We've added the networks to a network group. Now the next part is going to be, how do I provision the SSIDs? So this is going to be where we're introduce something called the configuration profile. And then for wireless, this is going to be our SSID profiles. This is going to be used for us to provision SSIDs at scale because we want to make sure that the SSID name is the same, the security method is the same, so is it .1x or passphrase as using WPA2 or WPA3. We want to make sure that's identical for all these networks so that when the clients roam, they'll be able to have that fast and seamless roam. So to do this, we'll do create an SSID profile. And if you've already configured an SSID in Meraki today, it should look very similar. We have close to all the same knobs that you have in the access control page. So in this case, you can set the profile name. I'll use that as the SSID name as well. And then in the security, you can choose whichever security method you want to use. So if you want it to be like passphrase, or I'm going to use .1x, and I'll be using my radius server. And then to ensure that I am ready for Wi-Fi 7, I'm going to do my WPA3, and then I'll turn on 11R so I can get my fast roaming. And then I'll turn on GCMP 256. And then next, I'll select my radius setting. So the nice part with SSID profile is it does give you some flexibility on the SSIDs you want to use, on the radius servers you want to use for your SSIDs. So you can configure it per network. So if you have network specific SSID radius servers you want to use, otherwise you can use org defined radius settings. So this is going to be those same radius servers that you defined for your switches in org for the org level. You can use those same ones for your wireless now too. So I'll select my org wide defined ones, and they're already there. And if you want, you can also add a new radius server, and then it'll automatically save it into that org level radius server so they can be reused later. But in this case, I already have mine defined. And then had you done any splash, you could set that. But this is going to be where we can define now if we're going to tunnel or locally bridge these SSIDs. So as Travis had alluded to, while we are launching this initially with Campus Gateway networks only, this can be also used for just traditional local bridged Meraki networks as well. You can just set it to bridged and then apply it as is. Otherwise, in this case, we're going to tunnel it to a Campus Gateway, and then you can select tunnel mode with Campus Gateway. Then if you want to do any MDNS gateway functionality, you can enable it here. I'm not going to use any, I'm going to use, let's say, AirPlay, and then printers, and let's say Samba. So then we can click Save. So now that we've created the SSID profile, how do we actually apply it to these networks? So what we do is we'll go click under Apply to Zero Networks. You can click here, and then now it'll list all the networks you can apply this SSID profile to, and it'll be all the wireless networks that you have within your Meraki org. But in this case, because we want to do fast roaming across AP networks, I'm going to choose my network group that has all these networks added to it. And then let's first add it to building 11. So we'll click this guy, and then you can select any SSID that exists in this network today. You can apply this SSID profile on. Just note that if you do apply it to an existing SSID, we will overwrite all the settings on that SSID with what we have configured on the SSID profile. So for example, here I already had this configured for non-SSID profile. So I will apply my profile to this. We'll go continue. And then this will launch the access control page for that specific SSID within the network. And then you can also see that here we added a new field called apply SSID profile. So you can also apply an existing SSID profile from the access control page today. You can just select which one you want to use. And then once you do apply that SSID profile, we do gray out most of the settings. The reason is we want to avoid a lot of config drift between different networks, because you can imagine if you apply an SSID profile to hundreds or maybe thousands of AP networks and you start changing one or two settings within each one, config drift becomes a real problem, and you might actually run into an issue where the SSIDs don't match anymore between network 1, network 2, and network 3. Like you might have accidentally changed the security settings, right? So now you won't have that fast roam. So because of that, we gray out most of these settings. So you can see that the settings that I had configured in the profile are there. So the radius server with .1x, WPA3, 11R, but these are all grayed out. But for some flexibility, we do allow you to choose which campus gateway you want to be as the primary campus gateway cluster to terminate the traffic on. So you can choose the different clusters that are there. One thing to note is you can't tunnel to campus gateways that are within different campus gateway networks. So in this case, I have a campus gateway network called Campus Gateways, and I can only tunnel to these. But if I already set an SSID to tunnel to one of these clusters, I can only tunnel this SSID to the clusters within that same campus gateway network. The reason being is because we only distribute the PMKs to campus gateway cluster members within the same campus gateway network. And if you do roam between an AP that is tunneling to a different campus gateway and a different campus gateway network, you will not be able to get that fast roam. It will be a hard roam.
I think this is important because this is Travis showed this in terms of, on the block diagram effectively, but this is where now you're crossing from one, say, group of 4, a group of 8 into another group of 4, another group of 8, right? And you can't have both in the same network. You have to pick one or the other for this network.
Correct. Yeah.
Now you can have those multiple campus gateway networks, multiple roaming domains in the network group, but once you've set this, then okay,
For
that's
this network.
roaming domain. Now pick your cluster in that roaming.
The bridge mode is not highlighted here, right? Because you selected that when you can't select bridge mode here, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if you wanted to have like a bridge mode SSID with SSID profile, you would have had to set that within the profile itself.
Well, and I don't think you would typically do that on the profile, right? Well, I guess you could. You could have something that's local on all the networks also. That's kind of back to the question I think maybe Dan asked earlier about, is this only applied to the campus gateway? But I think that with this, the nice thing is you could still create another SSID that's not this SSID, and then do whatever you want with it. So back to kind of that example of, hey, I've got a local store. Maybe we have the corporate SSID for all the guests, but maybe we have a local SSID for the staff or something like that, and we can call it whatever we want. We can set it up locally at that store however we want. Maybe this is an airport, for example, and we want to give some control to that particular store so they can offer their own SSID and that kind of stuff, but still offer the airport SSID on their APs, right? So this would be effectively the airport SSID as an example, right? And then you'd have the store SSID would have total control over how they wanted to drop theirs off locally.
Yeah, so I can show you that real quick. So after we kind of go through this, we choose a campus gateway cluster. We also allow you to choose which VLAN you want to assign for that specific network. So in this case, let's say for this network, I can use the IoT VLAN. Otherwise, I can use a different VLAN for another network and another network. And that's kind of where that layer 2 or layer 3 roaming comes into play. And once you're done, you can click save, and then it'll apply the settings. And then now you can get fast roaming across different APs in different networks as long as they come to that campus gateway. Now back to kind of Al's question about what about for those like site-specific SSIDs that are like maybe you're at an airport, the restaurant has its own staff SSID. You can do that too. So for example, you can have SSIDs that are applied by SSID profile, and then some that are just full control over the SSID within that specific network. So in this case, Banana. Banana does nothing to do with network groups demo. It's just Banana. You can set it as you would before with any other Meraki SSID, and then you can set it to be a local bridge mode SSID. They can do all your traditional Meraki local bridging configurations. You can set the VLANs, let's say VLAN 45, and then you can click save, and then they have full control over that. While the existing airport SSID, the network groups demo, you'll be able to roam across the different AP networks.
Yeah, back to your example, Al, right, of the airport. You have your airport SSID. That would be sort of managed by, say, a org level admin or architect, or even just the airport itself. And then this network could be for that particular store, and they're a network level admin, and they can choose and pull in this SSID profile. The org level architect can assign this, but they could also Justin showed, build this banana SSID specifically for their store as well. So it's kind of like tiered of, okay, who has permission at what level.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I get this request a lot, like I mentioned earlier, like in higher ed, where they have research areas and stuff like that, right? They get grants for these research areas. They want to keep things.
Yes.
They don't want to. The campus administrators don't want to manage all of the local networks for these research areas, but they also want to have the campus networks available there for everybody, right? And so this is a great solution for that sort of. And this was traditionally not something simple to do on a controller, right? And so I think this particularly lends itself well towards that kind of an architecture.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could still build profiles for some of those labs. Say maybe you have 3 generic lab types. You could pick and choose where you assign that profile, right? Say you have 10 networks and only 5 of them need the lab. You could apply that profile to those 5 and give them some local control if it needs to be bridged or something like that.
Right.
Or you have a lab specific campus gateway cluster where all your lab traffic lands too.
Yep. Yep. You get a smaller, because of different sizes, right? You get maybe a smaller version, the L version, and put it in that particular lab or group of labs. And so you can still have the centrally switched if you wanted to. Yeah, some really nice options here. Really nice.
And then the last thing I just want to show is just for the network groups is going to be the network group monitoring page. So this will help provide customers with an easy to visualize view and summary of all the networks within your network group. So it'll say, help you see what's campus gateway versions are running, how many clusters are in each network that are added to the network group. Because you can have different campus gateway networks added to this network group. It's just that they'll be in different roaming domains. And then you can also visualize how the APs are tunneling to each specific cluster. So you can say, okay, for AP building 1, I can see that these SSIDs are going to this campus gateway cluster. This SSID is going to that campus gateway cluster, just to help you kind of visualize and ensure like everything is looking as expected. And then we also will help call out if there's any issues with specific clients or APs within all these multiple networks within the network group. We'll help call it out. So say, all right, we're seeing a lot of issues in building 11 and 13, as well as for these specific APs. Building 11, there's going to be 8 APs that it has that might have an impact you might want to take a look at. So we are working to kind of potentially improve what we're showing in that page, but for the launch, it is going to be able to help you visualize mainly what is going on within each AP and how it's going to each different campus gateway cluster.
Justin, we have a question from the step where you were configuring or assigning the profile to the networks. Actually, it's from the network groups. Can we apply the profile to multiple networks at a single time, or do we need to go one by one, selecting the networks assigned SSID and then continue to associate it to the campus gateway?
So that's a good question, and I don't have the answer you're looking for, but because we have to do it one by one from the UI today. We are looking for ways to enhance this process so it's not a one by one process. I will say we will have APIs available for customers to use as well, where they can assign it to those specific to the multiple networks, through a script or something to help make life a little easier. But as of today, from UI, it's only one by one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is where workflows comes in, because you have to use each network has a bit of configuration that's specific to that network, and that's because we have the flexibility that you can assign different gateways to different networks. We could take that away, but then you'd lose that flexibility, right? And so now, if you want to scale that, probably the best way to do that is exactly what you said, Justin, through the APIs. Use workflows. Heck, use AI to generate the workflow, right? Use AI to generate the workflow that can automate this, right? So this is, and I suspect we'll see, lots of stuff like this that's automated in the workflow stores and stuff like that, because this is a natural case for that sort of application. So.
Yeah, and I expect this workflow to continue to evolve evolve over time. I know we're just getting started with profiles. I have plans to add additional profile types, right? As you can imagine, now I have multiple networks. It'd be really swell to have a RF profile at the org level that I could reuse multiple times as opposed to only configuring. So as we continue to build this out and expand those use cases, expect it to look similar to how we're building this momentum around deploying campus gateways, right? Like this will just continue to get better, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks. All right, the questions are pouring in here now. So there was a question around, I guess, limitations around using combined networks. So regarding, are there considerations or downsides to building network hierarchy with combined networks, not wireless only?
If I think I understand the question of combined networks, meaning APs and campus gateways, sort of like our launch model, you can still totally do that and deploy that way, that in a network group. But you still are going, at that point, you're going to max out at the 12,000. Well, in the network, I think we still have a device limit of 6,000 in the network itself, right? So you won't,
Okay.
from a device, just total devices in the dashboard network. So you won't be able to scale out because that effectively becomes your roaming domain, right? Of the APs there, you won't be able to send, traffic to another network that has that combined stuff. As Justin was kind of showing, because the PMKs are all shared within there, you could build more campus gateways in that network, but still you're going to get kind of capped by that dashboard device limit, as opposed to distributing the APs across those different dashboard networks that could have, 6,000, whatever across.
But one thing to add though is, yes, from that launch model where you have the campus gateway and APs in the same network, you can also further, to increase AP capacity, you could start tunneling APs in different networks to those campus gateway clusters. Because kind of another part of the network groups is to allow for that multi-network. So you can logically make Meraki networks as, say, where the devices are physically located, say, per building, right? So if the APs and campus gateways are in, say, building 1, put them in the building 1 network. Then building 2 APs can go there, and building 3 can go there. And then also, if just to expand the question for, if it like a combined network with, say, even like the MXs, the switches, the cameras, and things like that. Network groups today does not care if you have those other devices in those networks. It really just has to do with the wireless. Okay. So if that combined network has wireless devices in it, then that's where network groups would come into play. If you just had a combined network with just wired only devices, and then your MX and your MTs and your MV, sorry, you could just, you don't really have to, network groups doesn't really apply for you today.
Yeah.
I think just for anything with APs.
You probably answered the question better, Justin, because I didn't even think combined networks meaning switches and other things. Yeah, when we say AP and CG, that, yes, you can have switches and all those other things in it too.
I think that's just more informational, right? To tell you what's in the network, not that's, if I got switches in that network, it's not that's something that's participating in the network group. There's another, and this one is, and I know we've had this discussion before, but I think this is really a good discussion. Firmware. How does that work with the APs? Like, do my APs and my gateway need to be on the same firmware levels? How does this upgrade process work? Because that was always one of the pain points around controllers, is my controllers and my APs always have to be on the same. Is that the same case here? Is it different? How does that work?
So in terms of firmware, we're going to give you some flexibility with how with the different versions, right? It's because unlike where like on-prem, where we have a tight coupling between the APs and WLCs need to have the same firmware version, we do have some flexibility on Campus Gateway. The APs don't have to always be in the same version. We actually provide some flexibility. So I'm actually going to share my screen real quick just to help visualize it a little better. So if we go here, I'm just going to zoom in on this here. So essentially what we have in Meraki today is going to be, like MCG, like 32.2.4 and MR 32.2.3 or .5, right? So we kind of label them as a major, a minor, and a patch. So for 32.2.4, it would be 32 is the major, 2 is the minor, and then .3 or .4 is the patch, right? So what we're going to say is for a network group, when you add APs and campus gateways all together, for all this network group functionality to work, you do need a minimum of 32.2.3 for this to work. But going forward, the differences can be that the campus gateway can be at most one major software version ahead of the AP firmware. So what that means is we just launched 33.1.1, right? That's in beta today. If you want to try that with just your campus gateways and some APs, that's okay. So what you that means that you can leave your APs at say MR 32.2.3 or .4, and then upgrade your campus gateways to 33.1.0 or .1, right? And then there might be cases where the AP needs a patch version, but maybe not the campus gateway version isn't quite ready yet. That's okay too. So in this case, APs can be ahead of or behind the campus gateway by patch version. So that means that if a .4, .5 release, like 32.2.4 or 32.2.5 comes out, we'll be able to upgrade those APs to get together independently of the campus gateway. So you can leave the campus gateway at its like 32.2.3. The reason this is more from a testing perspective, right? There's nothing like keeping us from saying, oh, you can upgrade your APs to, in the future, like 34.1.2 or whatever, right? But it's more from a testing perspective because you can imagine as we release more and more software versions, there's going to be a lot more like infinitesimal combinations that could work. And that just doesn't scale from a testing perspective. But to give you that flexibility, we do have that, one major version ahead for Campus Gateway, and then APs can be ahead of the Campus Gateway by one or two patch versions.
I think one of the big struggles is always, hey, I want to deploy the latest APs. I've got some of the older APs on. I don't want to have to upgrade because I finally found a code version that is stable, right? Now, how do I deploy these new APs? And I think that's something that we need to look at carefully as we go forward in terms of stretching those releases and that kind of stuff. But it's great to know that they're not directly coupled now, right? Like they were on the controller. So.
Yeah, so one thing to you could say is you could have your pilot site, right? You could have, pilot site 1 with all your APs. You could upgrade the AP to that new version. Okay, I like this software version. Let's upgrade the next site and the next site. So it gives you that flexibility without having to say, okay, now I have to upgrade everything. I'll upgrade my campus gateways all at once, right? I can just do my AP and then just let it be. If it's good, you could wait till the campus gateway software version becomes, say, that recommended release now on dashboard.
Okay, good. We're coming up to the bottom of the hour, so we probably better. Is there any other questions that came in, Dan, that you saw?
No, I don't see any others. Yeah, we've had a lot of great questions and good discussion. So this is good.
Lots of really good information.
Yeah.
This was really good.
Yeah, thank you, Travis and Justin. And also for the viewers, episode 59 I looked it up. That was the previous episode where we talked about more in depth as far as architecture and whatnot on the campus gateway too. But if you do want to go back, that was another one out there for reference.
Excellent.
So, thank you, Travis, Justin. Great job. Appreciate covering all this, giving us what's new on the campus gateway. Anything else you guys want to say before we wrap up?
No. Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah.
Always appreciate your time. All right.
Yeah, this is really good stuff. I just think this opens up a whole new world here in terms of what we can do from a cloud managed standpoint. So
yeah, we've certainly seen a ton of interest from the field thus far. With your guys' help, obviously, right? being our advocates for us. But yeah, I agree. I think these things, this combined package of stuff is really exciting and opens it up a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks. So as a reminder here, you can go out and we encourage you to subscribe the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@getunplugged. And you'll be notified when we do go live, and you can always go back and reference this and many other videos back there. Last week, we did a great and very popular episode on back to school best practices for the fall here, making sure that everyone's on recommended code versions and, has a good smooth transition back to school here in the fall when students return to campus. But also, just want to remind you, you can always reach out to the show here. You can email us, getunplugged@cisco.com. You can reach to us through your account team, your Cisco account team. They know how to get a hold of us as well on X, Twitter at Unplugged80211 or Threads at Unplugged Connectivity. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Great to see you. And until next time, stay connected and unplugged.